The architect sat across from my desk, hands shaking, sliding 3 photos toward me. They showed his body in a finished room of his country house, a house that currently had no roof. They came to me because the bank was releasing the next construction draw, and his wife said he wasn't fit to sign. 3 days later, he nearly made those photos true. The prints were Polaroids, still a little tacky at the edges, the kind that hold a chemical sweetness if they're fresh. The gloss caught my desk lamp in a dull band. In each shot, the same room, clean drywall, a tasteful neutral paint, baseboard tight to the floor, a window trimmed out, no plastic sheeting, and him, face down on a rug, one arm folded wrong, a dark bloom near his temple. He didn't need to tell me who the body was.
The watch on the wrist was his. He tapped the corner of the first photo like it might bite him. "That's my study," he said, "at the country house." I'd seen a lot of things people wanted to call evidence. People brought me screenshots of dreams, handwriting from the dead, curses, conspiracy corkboards, photographs of your own corpse in a finished room that shouldn't exist yet was new. I was there yesterday. There's no roof. There's barely walls. I turned the first photo over. Nothing written. No date, no note, no shaky message. Just the faint indentation where someone had pressed too hard on the front while it developed. "Where did you get these?" I asked. He swallowed like the question hurt. "In my briefcase. After Gap. I was driving home, and then I wasn't. Then I was in my driveway with my keys in my hand, and I didn't know why. And the photos were in my case like someone mailed them to me from my own life." That was his pitch, a missing block of time. 3 photos and a house that didn't match them. He dressed like someone who makes decisions for a living. Pressed shirt, good shoes, but his hands couldn't keep still. Money had always had a way of turning even confident people into children. "Any history of blackouts?" I asked. He hesitated. It wasn't what he said. It was how fast he said it. "No." "Any medication?" Another beat. "My wife keeps track of that. She says I forget." "What does she say about these?" I lifted the top photo again, letting the chemical smell ride up. "She says they're a symptom, that I'm, deteriorating." "That I'm imagining things? And you?" He rubbed his thumb over the edge of the Polaroid until the paper warmed. "I think someone is trying to get me to do something. I think I'm being pushed." I asked for the practicals: address of the current home, address of the country house job site, names of the builder and the foreman, and permission to look at project paperwork. He gave me a business card from the contractor, a set of printed plans folded into a square, and his retainer check. The check cleared the first hurdle of credibility. Before he left, I pointed at his wrist. "Your watch, you keep it off on purpose?" He looked down like he'd forgotten he was wearing it. 4 minutes slow," he said. "I don't know why. Habit. If it's right on time, I'm late. If it's slow, I'm early." In the first photo, the watch face was visible. 4 minutes slow. A tiny detail that didn't belong in a hallucination unless the hallucination knew his habits. "Don't be alone tonight," I told him, "and don't go to the country house, not to check, not to prove anything." He made a sound that could have been agreement. Then he tucked his own death back into an envelope and carried it out of my office. I wrote the case name on a manila folder and underlined it twice. I also wrote a note to myself. Polaroids fresh. Smell. Watch. -4. Missing time. Wife controlling meds. Then I went to see a house that didn't exist. The country house sat outside town, where roads get quieter and mailboxes turn into long drives. The build site was a skeleton propped up on temporary supports. No roof, like he said. Sheathing stopped short in places. There were gaps where wind could thread through. A stack of plywood was tarped and strapped, and someone had left a portable toilet tipped at a lazy angle like an afterthought. I parked where I could see the structure without getting in anyone's way and walked the perimeter. No finished drywall, no trim, no painted walls. Just studs, nails, and the rough smell of cut lumber. I pulled out the plans he'd given me, unfolded them on the hood of my car, and matched what I saw to paper. The title block had the current month printed cleanly, revision number, and a big stamp, framing phase. On the sheet for the study, the walls existed as lines. In the Polaroid, the walls were perfect and painted. A contractor's pickup rolled in and dusted me with gravel. A man in work boots climbed out, looked at me and the plans, and decided I wasn't worth a fight. "You at inspections?" he asked. "Private," I said. Client asked me to verify some things. He didn't like that, but he liked conflict less. "Foreman's not here. Crew comes in tomorrow." "Any finish work delivered yet?" I asked. He laughed once. "Finish? We're still arguing with the weather. No, drywall's weeks out." I photographed the structure from multiple angles, especially the study area. I took a shot through the stud bays where the study window would be. In the Polaroid, that window was trimmed and clean. Here, it was a hole in a half-built wall. On my way out, I spotted a dumpster with a few empty boxes, hardware, fasteners. I dug enough to see if there were any paint cans or drywall scraps. Nothing. The kind of nothing that matters. Back at my car, I called the client. "The house is framed and open," I said. "No roof, no drywall. Those photos weren't taken there." He exhaled hard, like he'd been holding his breath since he left my office. "So I'm not insane." "Not based on that," I said, "but it means someone staged a room that looks like your future study, or there's another finished room that matches your plans." "That's impossible," he said. "Nothing's impossible once it's paid for," I told him. "I'm going to talk to your wife." He went quiet, then said, She's trying. She thinks I'm sick." "Are you?" I asked. He didn't answer directly. "Sometimes I lose pieces. It's like walking into a room and forgetting why, except it's ours. She handles my meds, she handles the mail. She says it's safer." "Tell her I'm coming," I said. He didn't like that.
"She'll panic." "Let her," I said. "Panic shows you where the cracks are." Their current home was tidy in the way a staged listing is tidy. No stray shoes, no mail pile, everything with a place that wasn't lived in. The wife opened the door before I could knock twice, like she'd been waiting behind it. Set decorator was what the client called her. Her hands had paint under the nails that no amount of scrubbing could get out. Her clothes were casual, expensive, and chosen to look unchosen. She didn't invite me in so much as she allowed me through the doorway like I was a delivery. "He said you were coming," she said, voice low, already tired. "I told him this is a bad idea." I took the offered chair. I didn't take the offered tea. I watched the angles of the room, the way a throw blanket was draped, the way the lamp was positioned, how every object was placed to suggest comfort without providing it. She lived in a world of surfaces. "I'm here because he's scared," I said. "He showed me photographs." Her posture shifted. Not a flinch, more like a prepared stance. "He has episodes," she said. "He confabulates. He's brilliant, and it makes it worse because he can build a story around a missing piece. You can't imagine how convincing he can be." "Show me his medical file," I said. She gave me a practiced look. "That's private." "He's my client," I said. "He can authorize it. He brought me in because he thinks he's being manipulated. If you're right, the paperwork will support you." She stood and walked to a cabinet in the hallway. She didn't rush.
She wanted me to see she had nothing to hide. She came back with a folder, set it down, and slid it across. Inside were appointment summaries, cognitive screening notes, and a list of prescriptions. Most were mild, the kind of things you'd expect for anxiety and sleep in someone under stress. One bottle caught my attention because it sat loose in the folder, like she'd added it to make a point. A high-dose sedative, the label printed clean and recent. I picked it up. The pharmacy sticker had the standard info, plus the prescribing physician's name and a refill number. The dosage was heavy enough to flatten someone without tolerance. "This is current?" I asked. "He doesn't sleep," she said quickly. "When he doesn't sleep, he spirals. He gets creative. He can drive and not remember where he went. He can leave the stove on." "I'm trying to keep him safe." "Who keeps the bottle?" I asked. "I do," she said, "because he'll double dose." "Do you administer it?" I asked. She hesitated, and when she spoke again, the words came out smooth, too smooth. "Sometimes I put it in his tea so he doesn't argue. He hates being treated like a patient." "So you drug him without his knowledge," I said, keeping my voice flat. She didn't like the word. "I medicate him with his prescription to keep him from hurting himself." I set the bottle back down and pulled one of the Polaroids from my pocket. I didn't hand it over. I just placed it on the table between us, like a test. Her hand moved toward it, then stopped. She leaned in anyway, studying the image without touching it. She'd seen it before. I could tell by the way she didn't search for meaning. She assessed construction. "It looks like a rendering," she said softly. "It's a photograph," I said. "Polaroid, fresh." "He probably did it," she said. "He stages things. He's an architect. He plays with space. He's been obsessed with death since his father passed." That was a new detail. It might have been true. It might have been a convenient seed. "His watch in the photo is set 4 minutes slow," I said. "That's his habit. If he staged it, he did it with his own watch on, face down, head injury makeup, in a finished room that doesn't exist." "He could build a mock-up," she said, and then caught herself and tightened her mouth like she'd spoken too far. "A mock-up?" I repeated. She shrugged like it was obvious. "Architects do mock-ups, full-scale corners, materials, light studies." "Where?" I asked. "In the country house, eventually," she said. "Or at the contractor's shop, anywhere." I stood. "I'll need to see where he does his work, his office, his studio space." "He doesn't have one anymore," she said, too fast. "Not since the episodes. He works at the dining table." I glanced at the dining table. No plans, no pens, no mess. A perfectly empty surface. "Tell him to call me if he feels compelled," I said. "If he thinks he has to go somewhere." She nodded, but her fingers worried the edge of the folder like she was tearing paper in her head. When I left, I noticed her keychain on a hook by the door. Too many keys, one with a square head like an old padlock key. It wasn't a house key. It didn't belong to a new build. It belonged to storage.
Outside, I sat in my car and wrote, "Wife controls meds, high-dose sedative. Mentions mock-up, then backtracks. Old padlock key on her chain." Then I went back to the only honest thing in this case, the photos. Under my office lamp, I examined them with a magnifier. Polaroids don't lie the way digital images do, but they can still be staged. In the second photo, the angle showed a baseboard heater vent, or maybe an HVAC registered near the floor. In the third, there was a faint shadow line above the doorway that looked wrong, like a seam. I flipped the first photo and held it near my nose. The chemical smell was stronger at the lower edge. Fresh development, not something that had been sitting in a briefcase for months. Days, maybe. Hours? I checked the watch again. 4 minutes slow. That was grounding. Whoever staged this wanted it to be him, not a mannequin. They wanted his habits present. I called the client to ask about the gap. "Do you remember anything before you found the photos?" I asked. "No," he said. "I remember leaving a job meeting. I remember getting into my car. Then, driveway. Any headache, bruises, soreness?" I asked. "My arm hurt yesterday," he said, "like I slept on it wrong. And my mouth tasted sweet, like cough syrup. Sedatives do that. So do some solvents. Did you drink anything your wife gave you?" Pause. "Tea," he said. "She makes tea at night. She says it helps." "Don't drink anything prepared for you for now," I said. "Get bottled water. Eat packaged food. I'm not saying she's guilty. I'm saying control what you can control." He sounded offended and relieved at the same time. "She's my wife, and you're my client," I said. "Stay alive long enough for me to be wrong." Next step was money. People stage death for one of two reasons: fear or profit. Fear usually leaves panic. Profit leaves paperwork. I asked him for the insurance documents. He emailed them within 10 minutes like he'd been waiting for permission. The policy was massive, the kind of number that changes the temperature of a room. Beneficiary? His wife. Clause? Suicide exclusion within a certain period after a policy change. There had been a change 6 months ago. An increase, a rider added for accidental death, and language about mental incapacity. I printed it and ran my finger down the effective dates. The premiums were paid from a joint account. The signatures were his, but his signatures were neat enough that they could be guided. I called the agent listed. I didn't pretend to be anyone official. I just asked procedural questions. "Can a spouse initiate an increase?" I asked. "Policy owner must sign," the agent said. "How do you verify?" I asked. "We meet, we witness, or we do verified remote," he said. "Depends." "Did you meet in person?" I asked. He hesitated. That told me more than his answer. "I met with them at their home," he said. "She was very organized. He seemed distracted." Organized. Of course she was. If she wanted his death to look like suicide, she needed his mind questioned first. That's what her story was already doing. Early onset dementia, episodes, confabulation. Build the narrative so everyone nods when the worst happens. I asked the client for project invoices from the country house build. He sent a shared folder access link with a password that looked like a date. I downloaded everything and started sorting by vendor and delivery address.
Construction paperwork is a swamp. It's designed to bury truth under line items. But line items have one weakness. They have to go somewhere. 2 hours in, I found an invoice for drywall sheets, joint compound, primer, and interior paint, finish materials. The delivery address wasn't the country house. It was an old garage with a street number and a unit designation. Not a typical job site address, more like a storage unit or a detached structure. I cross-checked with other invoices. Most were standard deliveries to the main site: lumber, fasteners, concrete, country house. But the finish materials, drywall and paint, were split. Some to the main build, some to the old garage. The vendor's delivery confirmation had a signature. Not the client's, not the contractor's. A cursive initial and a last name that matched the wife's.
I printed that page and put it in the folder. Then I made calls. First to the drywall vendor. "I'm verifying a delivery," I said, reading the invoice number. "Was that drop-off to a residence or a storage facility?" The dispatcher said, "Board. Old detached garage. Driver note says, access through side alley, key under mat." Key under mat. That meant physical access. That meant staging. Second call, to the contractor. I asked about the invoice. "We sometimes stage materials off-site," he said, carefully. "The build site is open. Stuff walks. Client requested secure storage." "Client or wife?" I asked. He paused. "The wife coordinated a lot," he admitted. "She has taste. She chose finishes." Taste. Surfaces. Sets. By late afternoon, I drove to the old garage address.
It sat behind a line of tired buildings in a strip of older lots, where people store what they can't admit they own. It wasn't a public storage place with a gate code. It was an actual detached garage on a property that looked like it hadn't been lived in for a while. The door was old wood reinforced with a metal hasp. I didn't break in. I'm a private detective, not a vandal. But I can knock on legal doors. The nearest neighbor was outside dragging trash cans. I introduced myself as private, showed my license, and asked who owned the garage. "Used to belong to an older couple," the neighbor said. "They moved to assisted living. Their son rents it out for storage." "Any recent activity?" I asked. "Some lady comes by," the neighbor said. "Drives an SUV. Comes in the daytime. Stays an hour. Leaves.
"Always has long boards or boxes."
A set decorator with an SUV hauling longboards. It fit too well. I asked if the neighbor had seen anyone else, my client. "Once," the neighbor said slowly. "A man looked out of it. She was kind of steering him by the elbow, like it had too much to drink." That was my missing time. I went back to my car and called the client. No answer. I called again, straight to voicemail. Then I called his wife. She answered on the second ring like she'd been waiting for trouble. "I found an invoice," I said. "Drywall and paint, delivered to an old garage address. Why?" Silence. Then a sigh that sounded practiced. "Because he insisted on mock-ups," she said. "To test light, to test proportions. He gets obsessive. He can't help it." "I'm going to that garage," I said. "You can't," she said quickly. "It's private property." "So is his home," I said. "But you showed me his prescriptions." "You're making him worse," she said. "You're feeding his paranoia." I looked at the garage door from the driver's seat. "If I'm wrong," I said, "then I'll see a garage full of paint cans and scrap. If I'm right, there's a room in there that matches the Polaroids." "You're harassing us," she snapped. "I'll call an attorney." "Do," I said, "and tell your husband to answer his phone." She hung up. I didn't have lawful entry, but I had something else. The note from the delivery driver, Key under mat. That wasn't proof of permission. It was a clue about how she accessed it. I walked up to the side door, not the main garage door, and checked for a mat. There was one, thin and damp at the edges.
I lifted it. Underneath was a spare key taped to the concrete. That told me enough about the kind of person running this. She wasn't careful because she didn't think anyone would look. She thought the story would protect her. Husband losing his mind, wife holding it together. I used the key and opened the side door. The smell hit first. Fresh paint and joint compound drying in an enclosed space. Then the sight settled, and my stomach did a small, angry flip. Inside the garage, someone had built a room within the room. False walls, clean drywall, painted the exact neutral tone from the photos. Trim installed with tight corners. A window frame mounted against a solid wall. No exterior view, just a black backing. The floor was covered with a rug that matched the pattern in the Polaroids. The lighting wasn't natural, it was rigged.
Two clamp lights with diffusion cloth hung from the rafters, positioned to mimic late afternoon. There was even a baseboard vent detail nailed in place for realism. It wasn't a construction mock-up, it was a set. I stepped in and felt the floor give a little. Plywood platform over the garage slab. The doorway seam I'd noticed in the photo was here too, a slight ridge where the false wall met the original framing. On a folding table sat a Polaroid camera. Next to it, a box of film, partly used. A small makeup kit with sponge wedges and a tube of dark cream. A roll of gaffer tape. And an empty prescription bottle with my client's name. My case stopped being weird and became criminal in a straight line. I didn't touch anything barehanded.
I took photos with my phone, wide shots and close-ups, the camera serial number plate, the empty bottle label, the delivery boxes in the corner stamped with the drywall vendor's logo. I found a stack of leftover trim pieces still wrapped with a barcode sticker that matched the project materials list. Then I heard a car door outside. I backed into the shadow between the garage's real wall and the false wall, keeping myself out of sight without turning it into a movie. I'm not built for hero work, and I don't carry a gun for drama. I carry a phone and a sense when things can go wrong. Footsteps. Keys. The side door latch clicked. The wife stepped in carrying a canvas tote. She froze when she saw the door ajar, then moved fast, too fast for a casual check. She crossed to the folding table and scanned the surface. Her tote hit the table with a dull thud. She pulled out the Polaroid camera like she was confirming it was still there. It was. Then she turned toward the set and took 2 quick steps forward. "I know you're here," she said, voice tight, not loud. "You don't get to do this to him." I stepped out. No sudden movements. I held my hands visible. "This is what you did to him," I said. "You built a room to match his future study. You drugged him. You staged his death and photographed it." Her face hardened. "He was going to ruin us," she said. "He was going to build that money pit until we had nothing. He doesn't remember what he agrees to. He signs change orders like they're napkins." "Then you divorce him," I said. "You don't drive him toward suicide." She laughed, short and ugly. "Divorce doesn't pay the premiums back. Divorce doesn't pay the contractors. Divorce doesn't pay for the years I spent making his work look beautiful." There it was. Money and entitlement braided together. She wasn't talking about love. She was talking about investment. I nodded at the empty bottle. "You used his sedatives. High dose. enough to erase time. "He's already losing time," she said. "I just shaped it, a little, so he'd stop fighting, so he'd do the merciful thing." "Merciful," I repeated. "For who?" Her jaw worked. "He doesn't want to live like this." "That's your script. The grieving spouse managing early dementia? It's convincing, but it's still a script." She lifted the camera, not to shoot me, just holding it like a talisman. "You don't understand what it's like," she said, "to watch someone brilliant turn into a child and still have people call him a genius, to watch him forget your birthday and then design a room with perfect proportions. He can't be both. It's cruel." I believed she felt wronged. That didn't make her right. People can justify anything with the right hurt. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't take my attention off her, but I slid it out and glanced down. A text from the client. "I'm sorry, I can't do this. Going to the house." My chest tightened. Not fear, urgency with a name. I showed her the screen. "He's going to make your photos real," I said, "because you put them in his briefcase and let his broken memory fill in the rest." Her face changed, first surprise, then calculation. "He won't," she said, but her voice didn't carry belief.
"You need to call him," I said. "He won't answer," she snapped. "He thinks I'm controlling him." "Then I will," I said, already moving toward the door. She lunged to block me. Not a tackle, just a hard step into my path. "You leave," she said. "You leave this alone." I didn't push her. I shifted to the side and kept moving. She grabbed my sleeve, nails catching fabric. "This isn't your business," she said. "It became my business when you tried to cash him," I said, and shrugged free. Outside, I called him. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Nothing. I dialed the contractor next, then the foreman number on the business card. Someone answered, groggy. "Your build site, the country house. Is it open?" "It's a site. It's always open." "My client is headed there right now," I said.
"If you have anyone close, send them. And don't call him. Just get a person on site." "What the hell is this?" he asked. "Just do it," I said, and hung up before he could argue. I drove hard, but not stupid. The roads out there punished the reckless. My mind kept pulling back to the set in the garage, the careful trim work, the lighting. She didn't just want him dead. She wanted the death to match a narrative she could show the world if anyone questioned it. Look, he was obsessed. He staged himself. He finally did it. Perception versus reality, built with drywall and pills. When I reached the country house, his car was already there, parked crooked near the framed entry. The site was quiet. No crew. Wind moved through studs and made a soft knocking where loose plastic caught and released. I called his name and stepped inside, careful of nails and gaps. The skeletal structure turned sound strange. A voice could hide behind framing and reappear. I found him in what would become the study, standing on subfloor, holding a length of extension cord in one hand, like he didn't know why it was there. There was no roof overhead, just open sky. He'd brought the cord anyway, because he was trying to follow the photo. His shoulders sagged when he heard me. "You shouldn't have followed me," he said. "I didn't follow. I ran." He didn't laugh. He looked smaller here, swallowed by his own project. "It's happening," he said. "It's in the pictures. I can't stop thinking about them. I keep smelling that room, like paint." "That's because it's real," I said. He blinked. "What?" "There's a garage," I said. "An old detached garage. Your wife built a mock-up room inside it. Drywall, paint, trim. She lit it to look like daylight. She drugged you, posed you, and took the Polaroids. His face went flat, like his mind tried to reject the shape of it. "No," he said, "she wouldn't. I have the delivery invoice for drywall and paint to that garage, signed with her name. I found your empty prescription bottle on her table, and the Polaroid camera." His mouth opened, closed. His hand tightened on the extension cord until the plastic creaked. "She said I was sick," he said quietly. "She said I was making up stories." "You are missing time," I said. "That part may be true, but missing time makes you easier to steer." He took a step back, heel catching on a joist. For a second, I thought he'd fall, and I moved closer, not to grab, just to be there. "What's wrong with me?" he asked, voice thin. Am I losing my mind?" "I don't know," I said, and I meant it. "I'm not a doctor, but I know what I saw, and I know what she's doing." He looked down at his watch, 4 minutes slow. The habit that anchored him now betrayed him because it tied him to the staged scene. His breathing sped up. "She wanted me to kill myself," he said, like he was tasting the words. "She wanted it to look like your choice," I said. "It's cleaner for insurance." The wind knocked plastic again. Somewhere a board shifted. He flinched like the house was speaking. "You can't prove it," he said suddenly, desperation turning to anger. "She'll say you planted it. She'll say it's my mock-up. She'll say I did it to myself." "I can prove enough to stop you from dying today," I said, "and enough to put heat on her. That's how it starts." He raised the extension cord a little, like he was going to argue with it. Then his shoulders collapsed. "I was ready," he said. "I came out here to finish the design." "That's the instruction manual," I said. "A staged image becomes an instruction manual when you're scared." Footsteps crunched outside on gravel. A vehicle door slammed. The foreman's voice called out, "Hello?" Relief came in sharp and unwelcome. I didn't like needing backup, but I'd asked for it, and they'd come. The foreman appeared in the framed doorway and stopped short at the sight of my client and the cord. He didn't ask questions. He just stepped closer, hands open, calm like he'd dealt with unstable workers on ladders. "Hey," he said to the client, "put that down. You don't want to mess with electrical out here." The client's grip loosened. The cord dropped to the floor with a soft slap. My phone rang. The wife. I answered because the timing mattered. "Where are you?" she demanded. "At the country house," I said. "With him." A pause. Then quieter. "He's going to hurt himself," she said, slipping right back into her mask. "Not today," I said. "I found your garage set." Silence again. Then a faint rustle, like she was moving fast. "You broke in," she said. "I used the key under the mat," I said. "Same one your delivery driver used." "You have no right," she said, anger cracking her voice. "You'll destroy him with this." "You already tried," I said. "You can come talk to him with the foreman here, or you can talk to an attorney. Either way, I'm calling it in." "You call anyone and I'll tell them he attacked me," she snapped. "I'll say you coerced him. I'll say you threatened me." "That's the first smart thing you've said," I told her, "because it's a plan, and plans leave evidence." I hung up and immediately called local dispatch for the county. I kept it simple. Suspected attempted suicide in progress, averted. Possible poisoning and insurance fraud. Evidence located off-site, victim vulnerable. I gave addresses and asked for deputies and medical. The foreman stayed with the client while I walked him out of the framed study and into open air where the sky didn't feel like a ceiling. The client sat on the tailgate of the foreman's truck, shaking.
He kept rubbing his wristwatch like he could scrub time back into place. "I trusted her," he said. "I know," I said. "That's why it works." When deputies arrived, I handed over what I had: printed invoice copies, delivery confirmation with her signature, photos of the garage set on my phone, policy documents with the recent increase, and the prescription info. I offered to take them to the garage location. One deputy took notes while another spoke to the client. A medic checked his vitals and asked about medication and recent memory gaps. The client answered poorly, honestly, and that made me trust him more. We convoyed back to the old garage. The wife's SUV was already there, parked at an angle that suggested haste. She stood by the side door with her arms folded, jaw clenched. She looked like someone waiting for a contractor, not a lineup.
The deputy approached her. She began her story before he asked. "My husband is sick," she said. "He's paranoid. This man is exploiting him." I didn't argue. I let the evidence do its job. The deputy asked for permission to enter. She refused. He told her they had exigent circumstances due to the report and visible evidence from my statement. He stepped past her and opened the door. When the set room came into view, the wife's posture changed. Not guilt exactly, more like irritation that her work was being misinterpreted. She'd built it too well to be seen as a crime. She wanted it seen as art. The deputy photographed everything in place. He bagged the Polaroid camera from her tote after another deputy watched her set it down. They found the film pack, they found the makeup kit, they found the empty prescription bottle.
They found the clamp lights. One deputy peeled up a strip of gaffer's tape from the floor and asked, "What's this for?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. No answer that didn't admit staging. The client arrived with the medic and stood in the doorway, looking at the room like it was a dream he couldn't wake from. He didn't step inside. He didn't need to. The space did the talking. "It's my study," he said, voice hoarse, "but it isn't." His wife turned toward him. "I did it for you," she said, soft, urgent, "so you'd stop, so you'd be free." He shook his head slowly, like moving through thick air. "You did it for money," he said, "and you did it because you were tired." The deputy asked her to turn around. She fought it with words first, then a small physical resistance that ended quickly when handcuffs came out. She looked at me then, not pleading, not apologizing. "You don't even know what's wrong with him," she said. She was right. I didn't. I'd only traced what she'd done around it. The medic led the client away from the doorway, talking about evaluation and safety and keeping him with family or a friend. He didn't have to mention the obvious. He couldn't go back to a house where tea came with hidden meth. By the time the garage was sealed and evidence logged, the sky had started to dim. Dust hung in the air and the headlights like slow snow. The set room sat behind the open door, perfect and useless, a built lie. Back in my office later, night had settled into the windows and made the street outside look farther away than it was. I put the case folder on my desk and opened my paper notebook. The retainer check sat clipped to the inside flap, signed, real, already deposited. Money always left a paper trail, even when it tried to disguise itself as love. I wrote the final chain: Polaroids, fresh, unfinished house contradiction, wife's sedative control, watch detail anchors reality, invoices show diverted finish materials, garage set discovered, suicide attempt prevented, wife arrested for fraud/attempt. I added 3 questions I didn't have answers for yet. Who kept prescribing that dosage? Did the foreman notice materials missing? What happens to the half-built house now that the marriage is a crime scene? The office was quiet. My ashtray held an extinguished cigarette I hadn't finished earlier, and a glass of water sat untouched, catching a thin strip of light.
I closed the notebook, slid it on top of the folder, and listened to the building settle. The case was closed, at least the part that could have ended with a body. Architecture is supposed to be shelter, but sometimes it's just a shape you build around someone until they can't find the door. I turned off my desk lamp and left the photos in the folder where they belonged.